Uncle Bill, you also saw a Congressman Kennedy, didn't?
Oh, before he was, when he was right after the war, right after he had decided to run for congressman. He was going to run for congressman in front of Tip O'Neill, and they used to have rallies around people's houses. So this guy came to Miss Shiro. Anyway, all our neighbors are there, and I was there. So anyway, walking, one of the politicians coming in was Jack Kennedy. He had just got out of the. He looked like he wasn't going to live long. He was very yellow and all singing. But anyway, Jack, this fellow was one of the people that called him over, and he said to Kennedy, Lieutenant Kennedy, he says, I want you to meet Lieutenant Bill Hall. And I had a Purple Heart here, and he had a Purple Heart in his. And they shook hands with me. So that was before he was sworn to the Congress that year. And from then on, he went, of course, to the Senate, and so forth, after another.
And then the presidency.
And the president.
Who knew? And that was down in Davis Square? Was that in Davis Square?
When I met her?
Yeah.
At Stone Avenue. That was my house was number 21. The lady was having the subway in her house. All the petitions. I don't know what they had though when you were still growing up, but they used to have rallies, and the politicians would come and give their talk.
And he was one of them.
So he was one of them, and he was very badly. He looked very sick after the war. He had very terrible malaria at the time, I guess. But when you think of all of his public, it's lucky that he lived as long as he did. But
so you get to see FDR and Kennedy in Somerville.
And I also met other people. President, what's his name? When Reagan got president, we went out to watch the funeral for Tip O'Neill. Not for Tip O'Neill, for Reagan was out of place there. Anyhow, Tip O'Neill came across the street with my wife, and my wife Ann, she's very talkative. So she sees Tip, and she saw him walking across the street. And she says, "Hey, Tip." And Tip, he says, my husband is a good friend of yours. And he said, "Who is that?" And he says, "Jimmy Hall from Somerville." Oh, Jimmy. He says, "Jimmy's a great pitcher." And he was talking about Tip O'Neill, about my brother, to Kathleen.
So Tip O'Neill knew about Jimmy Hall.
Shortly after he left, there was about 2 or 3 cars full of policemen. So another car came up. His name was Arthur. His name was. He had just been made vice president for Reagan.
George Bush?
That was George Bush. Because later on, he was Bush himself. So he came right over. Because Tip was talking to us, he thought we were somebody. I guess.
You are somebody.
Yeah.